and I cannot stand like Catholic.
I'm going to back you up for people who are watching this. So the 10 Commandments that Catholicism and Christianity use, as we know, came from Judaism and the Torah. And there are many ancient versions of that throughout the African and Arab and Asian world. And the priest class of Judaism were Africans. And we see that clash going on with Israel right now, where, you know, the Anasazi Jews want to expel Black Jews. And they were the ones who carried the laws, and such as the 10 Commandments. That those were the Jewish folks who carried those laws. You know, I forget which tribe, I'm blanking on it, that is of African roots out of Judaism. But yes. And I think colonization has led us to believe that, you know, Jewish people are like a race versus a religion, and it's just these one group of people, and it's not. There is many different ethnicities in the old world that practiced it. And so, yeah, those old roots, that those 10 Commandments, you know, well, even like that story of like walking out of Egypt and wandering through, like, where do you think Egypt is, people? Yeah. And so that's something I hadn't considered, but my understanding of history is like made me light bulb moment. Of course, you had something that was like so similar to the 10 Commandments, but prior to Catholicism's, you know, tweaks.
Yeah, tweaks. Yeah. And yeah, and that's kind of been my journey with that. And I'm hoping to go again, just like Egypt is also a colonized space as well. It's been very hard to go back to the roots, to talk to it's really going back to talk to like the grandparents and the older generation, because they hold all the secrets. And because we were very newly colonized, and because of that, it was in many ways, because we're so newly colonized, they were so much more harsh with the destruction of our teachings and understandings, in such a way that if you go back, it's very, very hard to find anybody who remembers anything past X. You know, they still have stories, but it's very hard. And even in the museums, like, of course, it's all from, because Egypt was colonized by many, I don't know what the proper term would be.
Colonized by many people.
Yeah. So and we're not part of those like Egypt exactly, but we come from that same similar land, so we have a very similar connection with the people in that area. And it's like, all right, where was I going with this? Yeah, so getting to the roots is incredibly hard, but it's possible. It just takes picking the small little breadcrumbs. In many ways, our ancestors and the people who are kind of trying to carry the faith have put it for us to find. But yeah, that's where I really see it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, the colonization's sort of been written out a lot. But it had huge impacts on like that whole area, and that whole area of Northern Africa. You know, the colonization there was long, it was intense, it was by many peoples. Yeah. So thank you for bringing that up, because we don't always think about that, you know. But yeah, so that is really interesting for a lot of people to sit on and think about, like, what are these roots, and where did it really come from? If you're looking for roots of spiritual practices and only going back like a couple hundred years, you are really, really missing the mark.
Mm-hmm. 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 And I think that's why I'm so drawn to the occult, because I mean, I don't even like using the word occult anymore, but that's the word I'll use. But the occult has the so-called secrets of the secrets, like behind everything. And there is definitely um, pieces of information dropped, like literally like a breadcrumb, like a little path that we have to kind of weave in and discard and throw away things that don't make any sense, or things that are colonized, or things that just come from outside perspectives. But there is a root, there is a heart to almost all of this. I mean, that's why many of our practices around the world are so similar. Literally, almost to a T,
Yeah.
some of the practices all over the world, we all kind of had very similar ideas and concepts, and that shows that there is a heart, that there is something that we all collectively as a people have shared on this earth prior to colonization, prior to any imperialistic ideas, prior to all of that. And it really does come from
Yeah.
the indigenous people of the earth, and what was said before the silence was trying to come about. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
What was said when we were still connected,
exactly.
and the
Yeah.
teachings we had when we were still connected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing that you are, drawn to these knowledges, and know that like there's breadcrumbs in there for you to unpack, um, because we all know like we have these different parts of our brain, right? And there's a limbic system that we say, oh, that's the instinct part, and the sex and the anger, but like there's so much more to that. I think that's where I'll, I think that's the part of our brain that when we awaken it, it's easier for us to do that intuitive learning, and to follow those breadcrumbs, because I think that's where a lot of those teachings exist, is in that part of our brain, because that's from when we were connected. And while the colonized world likes to say that that is the non-advanced part of the brain, I would argue, I think that that's also like you know that's our dreamer, and our instincts are tied to the earth. I think that probably this part of the brain is where our magical or esoteric abilities lie.
Mm-hmm.
And so also probably the part of the brain that helps those of us who have decided, I'm going to follow these breadcrumbs. I think that's where we find it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's incredibly possible. And so I think it's really awesome that you're drawn to that. So hit the deck.
Mm-hmm.
What is something you are so over in tarot decks, any aspect of them, from creation to images to whatever?
I'm tired of tarot decks being created without spirit in them. In that, and to say that there's many decks that I've seen and picked up, and read the history of the person making it, and it's like it's just there to make a deck. Even though people can infuse their spirit into decks and they can kind of put their energy into it, a lot of these decks are being, in many ways, created just to be produced, just to put something out there. Again, it's, I mean, just like in all spirituality, right? Like people just make things just to sell them, and then there's
Yeah.
not really anything attached to it. It's just to make a quick buck. And I'm kind of, as I look at these new releases of tarot decks, and it's like, where is the heart? Where is the spirit? What is the purpose of this deck? What are you doing with this deck? Where does this deck come from? Why are you making this deck? And that's why when I heard that you were like making the land back deck, it was like, okay, that's what I'm talking about. Like, yes, those type of decks are what called like intent. Something was made with intent, something made with a purpose. That's how I figured the deck should be made. But in many ways, decks right now are just being like popped out, popped out, popped out, popped out. And it's like, then you see the imageries of these decks are like, that doesn't make sense. Or like this, doesn't really, I don't understand what you're trying to do with this particular card, because they haven't done the proper, whether it's proper research or whatnot. They just haven't like captured the tarot deck properly, and it's just because of, you know, just making a quick buck. And I'm very tired of picking up decks and be like, oh, this deck looks pretty, and then finding a card and being like, I can tell this was not a research deck. I can tell this was just made to make money, as opposed to make an actual deck for spiritual uses. And I know that there's like a commercial and non-commercial, and it should be okay that people can make decks just to make decks. But in my opinion, when people who are, you know, trying to, again, follow the breadcrumbs, it's just more fodder that you have to kind of shift through, and then more money too, because even though spirituality is supposed to be whatever you have around you, like have it definitely is nice to be able to buy things and buy your herbs and buy your stuff and kind of make your stuff as well. So it's more money you're kind of throwing away, in my opinion.
Yeah, sometimes I had that thought when I've seen some tarot decks, like, what is this? Is this just production? Was this just hitting on fads people are into? I think I feel that way a lot of times about, like, oh, this is themed after a movie. And, you know, I'm not going to diss people who are enjoying those decks, but I'm just like, it feels like it was marketed for your love of a movie plus tarot. And if you're collecting a deck for art, like, cool. But yeah, I do feel that it kind of feels similar to folks who decide they want to read tarot because they want to be a professional tarot reader. You know, like, those people are like, okay, I bought a deck. What do I need to do to become a professional tarot reader in the next, like, couple months? Like, tarot is first and foremost a personal spiritual journey. And when you take that journey, you might become able to help guide others down it. But yeah, it's a little different, but it seems very similar to me. Like, oh, I'm going to read tarot so I can become a tarot reader and make some money.
Very question mark.
Yeah, I think I have an aversion to it because I certainly see people in my own culture who are like, oh, I'm going to reclaim my culture so I can become an elder or a teacher. And like this very instant, I want to be an expert instantly. I want to be a professional instantly. I want to be a teacher and a leader instantly. And
And yeah, like, just to talk about that, that instantness of, oh, I want to be this, so I'm going to do it in like 6 months or less. It cheapens the journey, as harsh as that sounds, but it really, my understanding of the journey from, you know, the triple goddess idea of maiden, mother, crone, that is a journey. You kind of have to respect the infancy stage where you don't know much, or you know, and being honest with that not knowing, but still growing and learning. And if, you know, if you are, and if that desire to do readings comes, and people ask you and you find you do have that natural, you know, ability, and it comes to you, that's great. And then, you know, the mother, where you kind of are still sharpening the stick and sharpening your mind and learning to become a leader, learning to become a spiritual whatever. But that takes time. And that's also why I love the wisdom of grandmothers, is that they got to where they were through their life. Their life was a lesson, not, you know, and that's what makes their spirit so strong. That's what makes their lessons so powerful, because you can feel the weight behind it. But yeah, just like with these decks, and just with, you know, readers to kind of just pop out and go, you know, take off running. It's like, we need that weight. We need that weight behind that, behind your readings. We need that weight behind your decks. At least for me, I need that weight behind my decks. I need to feel that, okay, this is coming from wisdom. This is coming from people's own understanding, whether it's an amateur making a deck or not. But it's just that there is something here and I can feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That spirit that just takes over and says like, this is what you're doing. And absolutely. I agree. So my hit the deck is more in the marketing packaging aspect, and because also I have to think of a new one every time I do this. It's shrink wrap. It's shrink wrap. I'm tired of it. Okay, so if it's mass market, I get that you're shrink wrapping the outside because of your fears of theft, and that's a terrible excuse. But why is the inside also shrink wrapped?
I never realized that.
Why is the inside sometimes also shrink wrapped? If you had those decks where you're like, I pull off the shrink wrap, take it out. Now I'm peeling off another layer of shrink wrap. And like when I created my deck, and there was all the packaging options, I like said, no shrink wrap, no shrink wrap. I had to make the choice, no shrink wrap. Maybe make it an extra to like make people choose shrink wrap. Indie publishing houses that publish for indie publishers and mass market folks. Well, how about you make shrink wrap something you have to opt into instead of out of? Why are folks choosing it still? Like, I just don't.
I feel like maybe at this point it's just people are that's what they see and that's what they think it should be done like. Because it actually makes no sense. It actually makes no sense. I consistently always have to like take things out of packaging. And one thing I always complain about is packaging. It's like it's always the worst. It's always super like unnecessarily terrible for the environment. Like it's like you don't need all this. We do not need all this extra money just to in many ways help further the destruction of anyways it's too much. It's too much.
The bigger the box, likewise, the bigger the box, the less impressed I am.
Yeah, especially these days. We live in come on, let's move on. We're in 2022 or 2021. Let's go. We can do this. We can do this in a way that makes sense. Really. I'm so tired of picking up a box and having one book sitting there and the whole thing is just weird plasticky cushions. Anyways. No, it's literally nonsense. Yeah,
it really is. Mm-hmm. Let's go for less packaging, folks. Less packaging. And if you're so into the hard box, because there are a lot of deck folks who like a hard box and are going to be like, well, that's just because you don't like your boxes and you throw them out and what. Okay, so there you can still do small hard boxes. It's not as good for the environment as a tuck box or like a cloth bag, but it doesn't have to be huge. The decks are,
oh my goodness, I'm so tired of seeing those giant decks like this big for this small. I think that's definitely unnecessary because you do not need all that. You really do not need all that. If
you want to do a fancy box, you can make them smaller and reduce that amount of resource used for the fancy box. If you're into the fancy box.
I prefer cloth bags. I think cloth bags just feel better. They're easier to pick up and take with you everywhere. I think they're much more superior in my opinion.
Although interestingly, I thought I was going to go with a cloth bag over a tuck box for my deck. And the all natural cloth bag was like resourced in Indonesia. And the tuck box was, recycled materials from the United States. So that ended up being more environmental than the cloth bag that was going to be produced with likely underpaid labor and stolen resources. And God knows where that cotton was coming from. It could have come from in China with forced labor. So if the cloth bag option ended up being actually less environmental.
Wow, that's interesting. For something that's kind of touted as, yeah, this is better for the environment. In actuality, not.
In actuality, it wasn't. It was going to have a mass carbon footprint and a mass humanitarian footprint. Mm-hmm. So that was eye-opening for me. I had assumed that cloth was going to be the more environmental option, and I was wrong. But I shouldn't have been, because we all know that cotton, just can't get away from that slave history and just keeps finding new places.
It does.
Yeah.
Especially like prison, like prisoners now, or they're like, that's a whole nother story to talk about. But yeah.
Prison labor, yes. Yeah. And there's so many things in our world that come from prison labor. And we're not going to, we don't know unless we like trace that trade route back, that like, yeah. In Canada, we see a lot of products created by co-rant, which is prison labor.
Actually, Canada has quite a bit. I think they said it's like 20% of our goods are made, or 20 to 30%. I'll have to look up that number. But yeah, Canada's just like, Canada's hands are always bloody, but it just keeps getting more bloody. Again, it comes down to personal responsibility we were talking about. We don't look because we don't think it's our responsibility to know.
Yeah, and on that note, we're going to go off on a few things, folks. Back to prison labor in Canada, something I learned a couple years ago was Corrections Canada decided that as part of making sure that Indigenous prisoners had rehabilitation, they would get to make things like moccasins and stuff. Mm. Okay, awesome. co-rant then takes those moccasins and sells them.
Oh, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
Also,
so co-rant is now also making Indigenous products as part of reconciliation and rehabilitation.
That is disgusting. That actually physically makes me ill. What a way to talk about reconciliation and to do something. But that's just like Canada. That is just like Canada. That is disgusting.
Yeah.
I mean, even with the BC fires, like that's a lot of them were prison laborers, like doing firefighting with not as much training and not enough equipment, fighting to keep it's ridiculous.
Yeah. And when you're thinking that firefighters are dying and they're, incurring all these health risks, like guess who's on the worst lines of it? Mm-hmm. It is prison labor.
And then we think knowing that prison labor and the prison population is majority Black and Indigenous people, that is who it is. It even, it becomes worse than it already is. It's just, they're taking our people to literally, in many ways, uphold, again, the society, always the backbone of this colonized society, always. In one way or another.
One way or another. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Even we all knew reconciliation was about supremacy.
They're literally still assaulting water protectors, like right now. Like this is happening. Just because they're just saying all these fancy words, and they're really just hopping on the bandwagon of using all these like buzzwords right now, and then in practice, it literally is like going whatever. It has always been a frustrating time. I don't think Canada will ever. No, I can't say that. I don't want to. I want to have hope.
As long as it's Canada, it will be like this. As long as it's the United States, it will be like this. As long as it's any of those colonial states,
as long as Israel, is what it'll always be like this. Yeah. Oh, I swear. I think I was even I was writing a post for my own decolonizing my healing journey, and it was literally about how this is going to kill us. These are these institutions, they're going to kill us. They're going to destroy us, and unless we do something about it. And yeah, Canada, as long as Canada exists as it does, as Canada will continue to destroy us and eat all of us, even its own people. And I never could understand that. But that's how colonial figures work. They will literally bite off their nose to spite their face. It's just what they can never truly come to terms with what has happened to right the wrongs. They'd rather just continue to dig the hole and kill everybody along with them.
Yeah. So now we are going to move on to 60-second tarot. Mm-hmm. So in this portion, grab a deck, shuffle it up, and you're going to draw a card for me to draw and recreate, and I'm going to draw one for you.
Okay.
Oh, two.
Oh, that is not a card.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, wow. I drew the Emperor again.
You drew the Emperor again. So I'm going to be drawing the Emperor, and you are going to be drawing the Chariot.
Oh, that's actually one of my favorite cards. Okay.
That is awesome. All right. And go.
Shoot, that was actually so fast. I'm not okay. All right.
I didn't finish mine very much either.
But I guess we can talk about the concepts and what we were going for. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Okay. Your thoughts on the Emperor made me think of like the grandmother in the Matrix. Mm-hmm. You know, who's giving Keanu Reeves the cookies. These are my cookies. They didn't come out very well. And she's got like a shirt, so cute. Big and gold necklaces and some glasses.
Definitely looks like a grandmother or an auntie. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what came to my mind as I was drawing it was the oracle from the Matrix. She reminded me of your description of the Empress or the Emperor.
You're not going to be able to see one at all because it's all just line drawing. It's really terrible, but I was going for in one of my favorite, my favorite deck is the Sweeney Todd deck, and in the deck, the Chariot represents weaknesses that are actually your strength. So what you perceive as something that's like bringing you down, something that's like negative about you, ends up actually being your strength. So I was thinking of also the grandmother and how in many ways like old age and with like wise, the traditional wise look of somebody who looks wrinkly and old. And then their shadow, which is, that's kind of what I had here, was like a fierce creature or being in the behind, to show that there's power in that age, and that like despite our current idea of how like when you're older and whatever that you're actually your weakest, to me it was like the reverse. It's actually when you're the most strongest. So that's kind of what I was going for with the Chariot, but it was a very bad job.
I really like that. I tried to warn you. It goes fast.
It was so quick. I didn't even realize at all.
I think I might start telling people you really want like crayons or markers or something.
Yeah, definitely. Because the pencil look is not. I should have gotten some markers because I could have at least done something better than what I was doing, whatever that was. But yeah, that was really fun.
Again, thank you so much. We'll see you later. Everybody, check out Nailah's socials and everything. They are going to be in the description box. And get a tarot reading, follow along, like posts, all that stuff.
Yes. Awesome. Bye.